We want to say hello, Dumelang Sanbonani, South Africa. Welcome to Expressions. Now, this is definitely the place for you to air your views. I'm your host, Jacqueline Maphala. Now, the time has finally arrived. In less than 12 hours, Wednesday, the 8th of May, South Africa will be heading to the polls for the country's 6th national and provincial elections in 2019. Now, tonight, we are encouraging young people go and exercise your constitutional right by voting tomorrow. Now, you might be wondering, where is my co-host, Umxolisi Wagamasango? Well, we will be crossing live to him later tonight at the IEC Results Operations Center in Tshwane. Now, he will be providing us with an updated, detailed account of the state of readiness ahead of the much-anticipated 2019 elections. But are you, as a young person, ready to vote tomorrow? Well, that is our big question that we're asking you tonight on Expression. Now, as a show, we went out to the streets to find out what you, as a young person, had to say about this. Take a look at this.
Hi Expressions, my name is Lona Mvenya. I'll be your street journal for today. We are here in Pretoria interviewing the youth regarding the elections that are taking place tomorrow. Now let's hear what the youth had to say about the elections.
I'm not sure about going to vote for my EFF, and I currently like to tell the young people to go and vote for EFF. We are going to have a big president who's going to change the country.
So did you register?
No, I didn't.
Why not?
Because at the end of the day, we vote, and at the end of the day, we don't get things that we were promised that we're gonna get.
The thing is, I don't know much about politics. Actually, I'm not interested in politics.
Do you care about how South Africa should look like in the next 10 to 20 years?
No.
Why should I vote when I don't have a house? They say I don't qualify, and yet I earn enough. But I can't get the house that I want because my money is not enough to get that house. However, I qualify to get a house, which is those small houses in Mamelodi or Pretoria West. I can't stay in that. I've got 3 kids. So why should I vote when the services are not there and we're staying in town? Whatever that we pay is higher than the people that are staying back at home.
The other political parties, currently they are hungry. They convincing people to vote. We're going to provide this and that. But if they can win, I don't think they can do much better to the ANC compared to what the ANC is currently doing.
Julius Malema helps many people. I once saw him at the police station there in Mabuluka Northwest, speaking for some of the community members.
Well-ke babukeli nizwela ukuthi abathina abantu basha base-South Africa. Let's hope ukuthi nani lapha emakhaya nizohamba nenza ama-decisions right niyovota kusasa.
So those were some of the sentiments and comments from young people on the streets, and of course, expressing how they feel around the voting and the elections that are going to be taking place literally in the next couple of hours. And of course, I need to say hello to Mgo because I never do this by myself. Mgo, can you hear me?
Yes, Jackie, we can hear you loud and clear. And Jobusus Bonela again now, we're coming to you straight from the Results and Operations Center, Konala Tshwane. Now, this is the hive of activity where everything is essentially going to be happening. There are marks, and this is definitely the nerve center of where everything is going to be happening. Jackie, and I can tell you that about 22,924 voting stations will be open. And of course, see Expressions, Nati, we're going to be giving you, just a bit of a breakdown as to what is the state of readiness when it comes to the elections that are happening tomorrow.
Excellent, Mgo. Excellent, Mgo. Exactly. I mean, Expression definitely has been your pulse, or at least making sure that you are completely connected in terms of what's happening in terms of the elections coming up tomorrow. But of course, I'm not going to be having this discussion by myself. I'm joined by a panel of guests. Okay, so let me introduce them to help me take this discussion further. I'm joined by Kate Babale, who is from the IEC, and she is the Chief Communication Officer. I'm also joined by Wasim Karim, who who is the NYDA CEO, as well as Sechaba Gaule, who is the Executive Creative Director of Six Fingers Media. Should I do six like this? Welcome,
thank you,
and
Jacqueline.
gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
I think let's get straight into this discussion. I think let's deal with the basics, Kate.
Yeah.
Our president was saying that he is anticipating free, fair, peaceful elections. Is that what the nation should be expecting in terms of the readiness of the IEC?
Tomorrow, when South Africans come to our voting stations, we open at 7 o'clock in the morning, we close at 9 p.m. We are more than ready. For the fact that South Africans living abroad have already voted. The past 2 days, which was Monday and Tuesday, we had special voting. So tomorrow we're going for the big one. Millions of South Africans will be received by our officials, trained with technology as well as material in our voting stations in every part of this country. So as the Electoral Commission, we are certainly ready and willing to receive South Africans.
Yeah, and for you, Sechaba, I think maybe let me just direct this question to you. I mean, you're also part of the XA campaign.
Yeah.
I think let's talk a little bit around that particular campaign. I mean, it sounds very fresh. It sounds very funky. I mean, was there a specific and deliberate target towards young people? But I think most importantly, why is the youth vote so important?
The youth vote is important because we know that today our youth, they're very vocal, especially on the digital spaces, and it was very important that we encourage them to go out there and have their voice, as much as they so loud on the social media spaces, that they go out there and make their mark and make sure that they're heard. And in terms of the campaign, it was a big responsibility, a beautiful challenge, if I may say, because the brief was quite clear that we need to get young people to go out and vote, and deal with the apathy of young people for voting. And yes, we had to come in hip, we had to come in fresh, and so exactly.
It's such a township, location, but very quintessentially South African feel to it, right?
I mean, you can go anywhere in South Africa right now and find somebody say "Exe," everybody will get the attention, because I mean the manifesto around the why Exe, it was so that, because Exe is a call to action. When you want to be heard, you say Exe, and any corner in South Africa, when you get there and you say Exe, everybody responds.
Yeah.
And maybe, Wasim, let me bring you into this conversation. I mean, as the legitimate voice around youth issues, youth programs, and so forth, do you feel enough was done to encourage the youth vote? But I mean, also speaking to campaigns such as Exe, do you think that they are impactful in getting young people to be, at the voting station, casting their votes and making their voices heard?
Yeah, I think, good evening, Jacqueline. Good evening to the viewers at home. I think, young people as a demographic need to be viewed differently from the adult population, and therefore targeted campaigns towards youth are very important, because they view politics, as you heard from the conversations, differently to how adults may view those conversations. But even within the youth demographic, you have different age groupings. The 18 to 21-year-olds are different from 31 to 35-year-olds, for that example. We were heavily involved with the IEC towards the end of the last registration weekend, and the statistics were excellent. Out of I think the 700,000 people who registered on that last weekend, 500,000 were young people. So that proves that a campaign such as that had a positive impact. But I think the message going forward needs to be that democracy is not just about casting your vote today; it's an ongoing process. And I think that's the message that the IEC and organizations like the NYDA need to drive amongst young people in the future.
Let's talk about what young people should expect when they're on the ground, Kate. I mean, how many political parties are we going to see on the ballot paper? I mean, when I was looking at, when we were talking about it, during our briefing, I mean, there are over 40 political parties. I mean, I think talk to us a little bit about that. Are young people going to be overwhelmed?
No, I don't think so. The fact that the ballot paper is organized such that it's alphabetic. Let's go back a little bit. We are sitting in these elections with 48 political parties.
48.
48, yeah. They're alphabetically structured. That means when you walk into a voting station, you are going to do the normal route where your name is being scratched out on the ballot paper after your ID being checked, and then someone confirming that definitely your face and that on the ID matches, and then you get issued 2 ballot papers. They'll be stamped at the back, not in front where you've got political parties. At the back, after being stamped, you go into your cubicle. When you get there, one of the things that you'll immediately see is that the ballot papers are longer than A4. So they're a bit longish, so that they fit all the 48 political parties. And then in both national and provincial ballot papers, they're alphabetically structured. So therefore, if you are looking for a political party, the only thing that will be different will be the first political party that was drawn at the Code of Conduct in Midrand the past days ago. So after you have gone through the first political party, the rest of them beneath that one will be alphabetic. So therefore, when you walk into, when you go into a cubicle, you know you're going to look alphabetically. The one portion of the ballot paper will have the full name of political party, and then you'll have the acronym, which is whether it's whatever party, and then from then the face of the leader of the political party, as well as the logo of that political party. So all the normal things that South Africans are very familiar with are still there on the ballot paper. So it's the only difference will be the length. But everything else remains very simple,
it's
very
normal.
normal.
So if, I think for a first-time voter, you're not going to be overwhelmed. And if you're a young person who's saying, you know what, I'm going to be out there, I'm going to be, using, my vote to make a difference, to cast a destiny and a future in this country, obviously they're saying to you, you're not going to be overwhelmed. But the 48 political parties that are going to be there. And of course, if you want to know the do's and don'ts, because we know as a young person, Orato is Instagram, while you're in the voting booth, right? So make sure you stay tuned, because we're going to be giving you some tips on the do's and don'ts around how you should be voting tomorrow. Stay with us. You're watching Expressions. We'll be back. Welcome back. You are watching Expressions here on SABC 1, and we're asking you the very big question, especially considering the fact that tomorrow we're going to be voting, and we're asking you as a young person, are you ready to be voting tomorrow? And that's the big question that we're asking you tonight. And of course, I am on the social media corner, but I'm not going to be having this discussion by myself. I'm joined by Christopher van Staden, as well as the Biker Queen, and they're all representing the XA campaign. XA, welcome to Expressions. I mean, there's so much excitement around what's going to be happening tomorrow. And I think I sort of want to understand what is your involvement and what kind of impact have you seen with this campaign that you're running? I think, let me start with yourself, Biker Queen. I mean, what is the response of young people on the ground?
Look, one, I'm very excited for the youth, I must say. And I'm very excited just for the country. This is a very important time for us because we all know, your ex is your voice, right? Your ex is the one. And, as a biker, we're very involved throughout the campaigns, throughout the nation. And people are excited. People are saying they want to vote because they understand that they, it is their voice. It is the only way to actually have this change. Yeah.
Christopher, as a young person, we know that young people are experiencing so many challenges, whether it's unemployment, whether it's poverty, whether it's inequalities. I mean, do you feel that young people are convinced that when they cast their vote, that this action in itself will make a difference in some of the social ills or the issues that they're facing?
Look, if you don't vote, you didn't necessarily bring your action. You didn't apply yourself to make change that you believe in. You believe in this change, and only you can make it happen. You can't sit back and go, I want things to be like this, and let's hope that people vote right. You gotta apply yourself. And if you apply yourself, change will happen. You will see the change if you become the change. Yeah.
I mean, constitutionally, when we think about voting in this country, something we can never take for granted, as much as it's a right. There was a time in our history where being able to vote was not something that was accessible to a lot of young people. I mean, what would you like to say to young people who are like, look, I've registered, but I don't know, I don't know if I want to vote, I'm not sure. They're like on the fence around it. I mean, maybe speak to us about the historical significance of being able to literally cast that vote on whoever you feel is correct to govern us in the next 5 years?
You know, I always say to the youth, whenever you come forth, and even like in moments like this, one stands alone. But you stand as the quote says, you stand as 10,000 people. A lot of people have carved to get us here. A lot of people have died. A lot of people have sacrificed. A lot of people have gone through a lot. We know our history, right? And all of that was done for an ideal. It was done for an ideology of this thing called freedom. It is the time now to actually experience it, but you've got to work for it. You've got to still carve forward, and we can't just necessarily give up. Do you understand? And you know, the beautiful time now is that it's so digital that we are able to just go into, you know, our social medias and have these, you know, just chat throughout the world and chat with each other. And we didn't have that back in the day. People gathered in somewhat way and you know, so this is the time to actually take that we do on our social platforms and actually just exert it.
Yeah.
That's it. Because once you do that, it tallies with that entire social network. It tallies, because then the changes can start happening. We can then be able to see, you know, what is the youth saying? What is but you know, the youth has actually voted. So it is very important that you stand up and you say, I'm going to put my X so that when I do complain on the social platforms, I've done the right thing, and you know, I can do change.
And you know, a lot of young people have a lot to say around the fact that they're so dissatisfied with whether it's service delivery or whatever. But I think if you're not voting, it just basically means you continue being disenfranchised and disempowered.
Absolutely.
And I think finally, tomorrow, as we're counting down the clock, this is an opportunity to say to yourself that, you know what, I can make a difference in whatever issue that it is that I feel is important to me. I think let's go to social media and just find out how young people are feeling about tomorrow. Okay, so Lerato Azania says, I'll be casting my vote tomorrow and I can't wait to exercise my democratic right. I love that. This is the only way to elect people who will address my needs. I love the fact that young people feel that voting is a way in which some of their needs can be addressed. Okay, let's go to Zimkona, who says, I'm ready because it's my first time. Oh, I love that as well. And I believe that South Africa will change, and for young people unity to basically come together. And I guess she's basically also saying that voting will allow her to change the country and turn it into something that she really wants. I think we're going to go into a WhatsApp note, because we know that Expressions is not Expressions without you having a say in the show. So we're going to roll the WhatsApp note. Roll it.
I think young people will go and vote tomorrow because more than anything, we want to be heard and acknowledged. And one of the ways to be, you know, seen or acknowledged is by us voting. And it's time for us to use our rights and take that opportunity, because this is the only opportunity for us to put in the party that we believe would, you know, make South Africa a better country to live in. Yeah.
I mean, to vote is to be seen, is to be heard. I think is to add meaning into in terms of where you want to go. Now, this is an interesting one. I think before I just go to an ad break, Cheryl says, no, I'm not going to vote, and never voted. I don't think it'll ever make a difference. I think this is basically what she's saying. I mean, okay, so what would you guys like to say to someone like that who feels completely discouraged and they don't feel that voting is going to make a difference whatsoever in whatever circumstances that they're facing? I think,
you know, for me, Cheryl, if Cheryl is registered, I would urge Cheryl to go and vote tomorrow, because you are the change you want to see, and people need to internalize that. It needs to stop being just a quote that we use when we're having discussions. We've got to actually do the action, and we've got to continuously do these actions. So I would urge her to literally stand up tomorrow, go put that X, and literally just carve forward.
Yeah, and for you, Chris?
So I'm just thinking, like, how can you progress if you don't express? And how do you express without your ex, you know?
Okay, let me not dance. Yeah, yes. No, that's absolutely powerful, guys. Thank you so very much for I think a lot of your word of encouragement. I mean, young person, please go out there, vote, 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 vote. I think it's important to understand that your ex is going to give you an expression. I'm not going to do it the way that Chris did it. let me not embarrass myself. Make sure you stay with us. Make sure you stay with us, of course. And we're giving you a front row seat to the May 8th election here on Expression, because we are your #1 current affairs show. As my co-host says, tell a friend to tell a friend that Expressions is on. We'll be back right after this. Welcome back. You are still watching Expressions here on SABC 1. And of course, we're giving you a front row seat to the May 8th national and provincial elections that are going to be taking place tomorrow. I mean, it's literally a countdown. We're literally counting down the hours. And you know what I loved about at least the social media corner is the fact that there's so much excitement. The fact that there are also people who've never voted before, young people who've never voted before, who are saying, you know what, I understand the historical significance of being able to put my cross, you know, against whatever political party I see fit, you know, addresses my issues. I think it's really powerful. It says that, I think as the IEC, but as the NYDA and XA, that you've done really well to get young people to understand the significance of this moment. Because, I mean, everybody says we can never come back to this moment again. And I think for young people to be a part of it, I think let's go into just some of the issues, because I mean, it's as much as this can work smoothly, we also know that there are a lot of glitches that are there. I mean, we've heard about Vuane, we've heard her as well around the protests in Alexandra, Northwest. I mean, they torched a vehicle of an electoral officer. I mean, for people who come from those communities who feel that their safety and security might be a little bit compromised, what would you like to say to them, especially if they feel like this is something we want to do, but we don't know if we're safe? I mean, what would you like to say to them?
Jacqueline, I want to emphasize the fact that in every voting station, you've got police presence. Every voting station, in every part of this country. The other important thing is that you've got the security cluster, which is the part of our elections preparation that takes care of our security in every part of the voting station. So therefore, I want to say to the Northwest people, we're not only, the IEC is not the only stakeholder in elections. We also work with the police, we also work with the army, we also work with various stakeholders. Also, you've got your faith-based organizations, you've got your organizations that works in electoral space. So it's not only the work of the IEC. Our safety has become very important as a country as we undertake these elections. So therefore, also when the Chief Electoral Officer earlier on spoke to the media, it's unfortunate that as a country, we're at a point whereby we don't even appreciate the work that is done by electoral officials. You know, as I'm speaking to you, Jackie, early hours of the morning, they'll be up to make sure that me and you, when we get to the voting station, we've got our ballot papers, we're able to comfortably cast them and ensure that the choices that we make are safely counted later in the counting process. So I'm appealing to South Africans that even if, no matter how angry they can get, they must make sure that that voting official, their job is to make sure that they they do the work of elections very professionally. So whatever they do, it will be very unfortunate if we lose lives in this election purely because our communities are angry. No matter what we do, let us, rather you say to IEC officials, give us space, then they'll walk away if that is necessary. But not to injure, not to burn, because remember, in that car that someone's car is being touched, remember their life that can be lost. We were at a space where we realized that anything could have happened in Northwest, but luckily it did not happen. So therefore, we're appealing to South Africans as we go into the polls tomorrow. If people are protesting, fine, but the lives of our officials are very important.
Exactly, and I think if people want to express themselves, I think this is exactly the time to do so through your vote. And of course, we want to cross over to Mkolisi, who is at the IEC Results Operations Center in Tshwane. Can you hear me? We're going to cross straight to you in terms of what you have that side. Go.
Well, thank you very much for that, Jackie. Njoba also mentioned Ilegenawe. We're at the Results and Operations Center, Konala Etswane. This is the heart of activity. This is where everything is going to essentially be happening in Kusasa, where Jackie, as you can see behind me, Futhi, there is just a screen that's been lit up right now, which contains some of the IEC branding. This is when Votes Mangena, essentially they're going to be registered up there. But of course, for more, we now joined by the Chief Electoral Officer, Baba Usai Mamabola, right here on Expression. Let's go. Thank you so much for joining us on the show. Now, Sai, take us a little bit as to how far back do you have to go to prepare for such an election?
It takes approximately 24 months to prepare for an election, and there are various aspects of an election that must be prepared for. The law, in other words, checking whether there are any improvements and reforms that must be made to the legislative framework. Secondly, to look at your logistics, review them, and then start the purchasing process. The budgeting side as well, engagement with Treasury, and outlining a 3-year budget proposal, which is then considered by the relevant Treasury functionaries. And then you've got to have a broad stakeholder management process to inform government, civil society. We expect to be the leaders of tomorrow. Those are persons who are going to be playing a key role in our structures of representation, such as parliament, provincial legislatures, and so on. So it's important that a majority of young persons who are registered get to the ballots tomorrow and cast their votes, because when they do that, they enrich our democratic processes. When they do that, they enrich the future democratic prospects of the country.
At the back of that, of course, I'm going to ask you to speak to some of the young people njengamanje watching your expressions.
Yes, everybody, we want to encourage them to make their way to the stations tomorrow, because as we say, it's an opportunity to shape the political direction of the country. Day is about you, it's about how you feel, and it's about expressing your own political views through casting a ballot.
Okay, Mr. Mamabolo, before we let you go, I just want you to outline the process. Your voter, from the time umuntu musha avote kaya to the time that vote registers on the screen there. Just briefly take us through the process.
You need your ID document, be it a green barcoded ID, a smart card, or a temporary identification certificate. When you get to the voting station, we will confirm that, take you through the voters roll. After the voters roll, you'll be issued with ballots. Ensure that your ballots are stamped at the back, and that's an important validation procedure. And after that, you go to the ballot, to the voting compartments, where you mark your ballots in secret, you fold them, and then place them into the box.
All right.
And after that, count at the close of the station at 2100 hours. Counting will start, and once counting is complete, a result slip will be completed, and party agents will sign the result slips. And those result slips will go to our local offices, where they'll be captured and audited by an independent audit company. And once the audit is done, only then will the results start showing on the leaderboards behind us.
All right. That of course, this area is expected to be packed throughout the whole of tomorrow. Mr. Mamabolo, sibonge kakhulu ngesikhathi sakho. You know, you've been a very busy man throughout the course of the past couple of days. Ake mbukeliwe expressions now. We know tomorrow you're expected to head to the polls. I'm so excited because I'm also going to be voting at Kusasa. We continue with this all-important discussions. No, Angelo Flick, who's also on standby as a political analyst to speak to us. Helenati, this is Expressions. I guess Pinde Sinbengele Snamgele. You're still with the Expressions, your hashtag #1 youth current affairs show. Again, I'm trying to see again from the Results and Operations Center Konala Etswane, where we are eagerly awaiting for the upcoming elections. Jobawazi Mzansi Africa is heading to the polls in just under a couple of hours. Now we're joined by Angelo Flick, one of our brightest political minds in the country. Welcome to the show, Angelo.
Hello.
Thank you so much for joining us. Now, Angelo, Expressions is a youth current affairs show, and we've been talking about the youth. We've been crisscrossing the country in election debates, and clearly it seems like the youth is getting smarter and wiser with the decisions that they make. For some of those who are not happy with the current situation of the government, do you think this is likely to reflect in the polls tomorrow?
So we know it already reflects in the voter registration for new voters, for people who are eligible for the first time. The registration figure there is quite low. It's the lowest across all age groups in the population. My sense is that voter turnout for those people who are under 25 is really an important issue, because they are the ones who will live into the second half of this century. And the people who are making the political decisions in this half of the century are people my age and older. And Umalume is not the person who's going to live in 2070. But these young people who are alive today will live in 2060 and 2070. And some of the decisions made by politicians in this next 5 years will determine the quality of life that they will live. And not just in terms of poverty reduction, but in terms of water security, food security, all sorts of accommodations to climate change that's already affecting populations around the world, and including in South Africa. And those are major political issues that young people can ill afford to leave in the hands of older people to make decisions based on.
That's a very interesting observation you're making. I mean, Expressions was in the Northern Cape just this past week, where we met this very young lady who was about 18 years old. You know, she essentially had lost all hope. She doesn't really have direction as to, you know, who she's going to vote for. Is this really a reflection of the current youth composition right now, to say there's still young people who don't know who they're going to be voting for come tomorrow?
So I think it's one cannot generalize from just one person, but your, particular person, the subject that you met in the Northern Cape, is not exceptional. There are probably hundreds of thousands of people like her across the country. There is no homogenous group of people called the youth in South Africa. Young people are divided along lines of access to resources in terms of class. Young people have rural and urban different experiences. There are the educated elite among young people. There are people who dropped out of school. We know that half of the people who start grade R don't necessarily finish within the 12-year project that they're expected to finish to get to the NSC exams. Those are young people who don't have the same textured experience as university graduates, as people who are going into young, first-time jobs. There are masses of unemployed people. Rural and urban youth don't have the same issues. Inside cities and towns, people who live on the peripheries in informal settlements don't have the same experiences as people who live in suburbs or people who live in well-established townships. People in townships don't have the same experiences, because if you talk to people from Protea Glen, the young people there don't have the same issues as young people in Alexandra. And that replicates across the country. The divisions that make up South Africa also make up South Africa's young people. And I think for too long it's been too easy to just go, young people, the youth, South Africa's young. The same divisions that pockmark the rest of this country also pockmark young people's experiences. And it's a tragedy that a quarter of a century after we voted to abolish the divisions of the past, those divisions persist for young people who have to bear the burden, not just of what happened before 1994, but the burden of what people of my generation are complicit with over the last 25 years. The society was built over the last 25 years, inheriting problems from before 1994, but creating new problems for young people post-1994. The major challenge of the second half of the century is certainly climate change and its consequences: food insecurity, political instability, and water insecurity. And that's something that today's young people will face in their old age, when people, as I said before, my age and older, will be dead and will not have to face. And so young people can ill afford to disengage altogether from electoral politics, because it is in electoral politics at the moment that policies are made, and those policies have consequences for how the second half of the century will look, and not just in this country, but across the subcontinent and across the continent.
And Angelo, some of the sentiments that are coming in also on our social media page is that 25 years into democracy, young people feel like we shouldn't really be having having a conversation about still fighting for free education, still fighting for equal rights. We shouldn't still be fighting, for a crime-free South Africa. Is this a fair observation that is being made by these youths?
Absolutely. I mean, when I voted for the first time at the age of 21 in 1994, and, people my age envisioned, and people at that point wrote about their vision of the future of South Africa. The present that we sit in is not that future, and we have to judge ourselves very harshly for how this present was built over those 25 years. The failures are not accidents. The fact that up to 78% of 10-year-olds cannot read or write in any language in this country ought to alarm us severely, because that group, those 10-year-olds, 8 years from now, will become people who have to enter tertiary and post-school education. They're the ones who will become our pharmacists, our engineers, our farmers, our police people, our lawyers, our judges of the future. And so the failure of education is one that I think the future historians of the present of South Africa will judge us very harshly for, that we failed signally, not just ourselves as the adults who live in the society, but the children and our children's children. And it sounds like a sentimental plea, but it's actually a dire vision that we should have of the future, that the intervention has to happen sooner rather than later. The longer we leave it, we cannot afford to lose another generation of young people who are inadequately educated, poorly prepared for the future, and have to deal with the consequences made for them by old people.
Angelo Fick is a political analyst, and thank you so much for taking your time to join us on Expressions. Bugelewe Expressions, this all-important discussion continues, and we take it back to Studio Masbuya. This is Expressions.
Welcome back. You are watching Expressions here on SABC 1, your #1 current affairs show. Now, we're giving you a front row seat to the May 8th elections that are going to be taking place tomorrow. And we're encouraging young people, please go out in your numbers and vote and vote and vote, and just make sure that your voice is heard in these upcoming elections. And of course, we're also looking at the state of readiness of the IEC. I'm still with my panelists. I mean, and I know there's so many questions to ask. There was a lot of food for thought that came through from Kolisi, who is literally at the hub, at the center, at the hive of what is currently going on in terms of our electoral processes. I think it's just mind-boggling to kind of say, is it possible for us to address everything in this hour? But let's do our best just to cover some of the bases, just so that when young people go to the polling stations, they really know what to be prepared for. I think something that was very important, and I think I want to address this question to Wasim, that Angela mentioned around when we voted in 1994, that a lot of us had a goal, we had a vision and an objective around what we wanted the future to be. We're 25 years into what we hoped to sort of be realizing. I mean, when young people are casting their votes tomorrow, is there hope that the next 25 years will be different?
Yeah, and young people bear the brunt of those challenges in South Africa. Unemployment is worst amongst young people. But we hope that this sixth administration is the groundbreaking moment for young people. I think it's important for every political party to realize that it's crisis point for young people. We've taken so many young people's dignity away from them by not giving them adequate education or by not giving them work in the economic market. And that we make this next 5 years or the next 10 years, youth, and in particular young women, because I think young women bear the brunt of challenges in South Africa, make them a focus and make them a central point for all of our goals and our achievements.
Okay. Let's again go back to the basics in terms of what time do polling stations open up, what time do they close, and is it the same times, the same across the whole entire country? I think
yes, the whole country in South Africa. Voting stations open at 7 o'clock in the morning and they close at 9 p.m. Remember to bring your green barcoded ID or smart ID card or a valid temporary ID certificate. If for some reason you wake up in the morning, you don't know where your ID is, remember the Department of Home Affairs have opened their offices the same time as ours. They can give you a temporary ID certificate, then you can come and vote. So tomorrow, definitely South Africa is voting.
And maybe let me direct this to Sichaba. For university students who come from different corners of the country, who cannot go back wherever they come from in terms of where they were registered, can they vote where they are?
Yes, they will definitely be able to vote for nationally, for the national on the national ballot paper. However, for your provincial ballot paper, you need to be in the province that you registered in. Yeah.
And maybe Kate and I'll definitely bring Wasim into this. For young people, I mean, we have to talk about rural and urban. We know that they don't have the same kind of infrastructure. And I know that you've done a lot in making sure technologically that we are connected, we have access in terms of information. But if I'm somewhere in the Northern Cape, I mean, Kolisi was talking about that. We've been to the Northern Cape, we've been to remote parts of the Western Cape as well. If you don't have access to internet or, you know, I don't know, airtime and so forth, how do you get information about what's happening tomorrow? What infrastructure do you have in place?
Remember, Jackie, we're working with the SABC. We've got the public broadcaster, which has got 18 radio stations with various languages. There's a lot of information on radio. There's a lot of information on SMSs. There's a lot of information on social media. So the information is wide. And also remember, we've got billboards. There's actually too much information. Wherever you drive in our country, you'll find something that will tell you what time we're open, what time we're closing, what must you bring to our polling stations. But also, we're not the only people that are communicating that message. We've got partners, we've got NGOs, we've got all sorts of partners. We've got political parties. I mean, you must see the spectacle of posters of political parties that are all over South Africa. So therefore, there's no one in this country who will tell me that they're not aware of what's happening tomorrow morning. Information is everywhere.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then for maybe young people with special needs, what do you have in place for them? Young people who are maybe going to accompany their grandparents or so forth. I mean, again, what do you have in place?
We've got presiding officers in all our voting stations, as well as deputy presiding officers. They'll be assisted in terms of whatever their special need is. We have made sure that as the IEC, we have catered for as many South Africans as possible. That's why we had special voting to clear up all of those very difficult cases and people that will not be at their voting stations tomorrow. So tomorrow is mostly reasonable South Africans who can access voting stations by themselves.
But you can be assisted even if you come.
Absolutely. That's the job of presiding officers, observed by political parties.
And then, Wasim, I think I'll give you the opportunity to close us off. For young people who feel that, you know, not voting in itself is going to be a powerful message around their dissatisfaction, what would you like to say to them in terms of encouraging them tomorrow to cast their votes?
Yeah, you know, I think we need to own our future. Yeah, and it's the person who's in the arena with blood and sweat and tears who makes the difference. You know, not the one sitting on the sidelines. Yeah, and tomorrow doesn't end your process in democracy. Tomorrow is just the start of your participation in that, you know. So what you do in the next 5 years is you hold this government accountable for what they promised to do for you as a young person.
I felt like saying amen to that.
Yeah, of course.
Maybe let me not say that. Thank you very much.
Jackie.
Thank you very much, Kate. Thank you very much,
Thanks,
Simon. Thank you very much, Chaba. Thank you very much for giving us a lot of food for thought for tomorrow's voting. Now, our poll question that we asked you tonight was, are young people ready to vote tomorrow? And this is how you guys voted. 80% said yes, and 20% no. So we're definitely going to be seeing you guys in your numbers. And unfortunately, we have come to the end of the show. And of course, we are going to sign off with another amazing and powerful performance from Nick Soul. And he's going to be singing a song called Spongile. I wonder what he's going to be saying about Spongile. From me, Jacqueline Mapala and Expression Team. Adios, muchachos. We'll see you next week. Bye.
Ngisele nesingane sethu. Do you know how hard it is for a daddy to raise his kids alone? Ngiyacela baby, phendula ucingo lwami. Even on your Instagram, down in the DMs, baby. Oh, Sibongile, baby. Oh, Gandhi, kwenzenjani na? Oh, ungile you kanti kwenze njani na. Listen to this.